Editing a manuscript is harder than it looks. And sometimes new writers can actually make an editor's job more time consuming and difficult simply because they make some mistakes that they didn't realize they were making during the writing process. In today's video, you'll discover the 5 key things that you need to do before you hand your book off to an editor to polish it. Hey y'all, welcome to today's Live with Lisa. If you're new here, my name is Lisa and I create videos that help you write and live God's way. If you want to honor God with both your life and your writing, this is the place for you. Also, every week we go live here with Our Given Purpose Ministries, which is an amazing ministry founded by my dear friend, Tori Slaughter, to help you grow in your walk with God and to get plugged into godly community. So not only can you watch today's live stream on YouTube and Instagram, but on the Our Given Purpose Facebook Ministries page as well. So make sure you get connected there and learn more about that incredible ministry today. So, when it comes to editing, a lot of writers, I think, really are a little bit misinformed as far as what's involved in the editing process. I want to encourage you to go back to last week's live stream to watch an overview about what the editing process looks like. Many writers think that there's only one stage of editing when there's actually 4. So make sure you go back and watch that live stream. It's talking about book editing for beginners, and it really helps you to get a better understanding of the different phases of the editing process. Today, we're going a little bit deeper in terms of talking about what editors wish you knew. I've spent years working in the book editing space and was a freelance writer and freelance editor for many years before that. And so I have a bit of knowledge in terms of what is really required during the book editing process and what can really make things easier for your book editor. And really, honestly, for your wallet as well. Let's be real, okay? And so let's talk about what book editors wish you knew as a writer and what they really hope that all writers would know in the writing process. The first one is to finish your rough draft. To finish your rough draft. It can be really tempting for, especially if you're a brand new writer and it's your first book, you're excited, you can't wait to get through the process, and you have finally typed those magical words, the end, at the end of your manuscript. You are excited and ready to go, and it can be very tempting to just send off your manuscript to an editor even before it's finished. Even before you've typed those words, before you have finished the actual manuscript and you just have some ideas, you have a few chapters here or there, it can be tempting to send your manuscript off to an editor early before you finish it. But that is really just throwing away money, if we're honest. A writing coach can help you if you are stuck in the writing process, but that's not really your editor's job for the most part. They can help you work through problems that you have, but they really need that finished manuscript in order to help you properly. And so they can't do very much if you send them a manuscript that's half done, or especially if it's just a few chapters and a bunch of ideas. You really need to have a full manuscript that is complete. And this is especially true for the developmental stage of the editing process. You want to make sure that your manuscript is done, that it's in a finished form, so that they can look at the big picture. Last week in last week's live stream, we talked about developmental editing and how it really is a big picture approach for your work. And so you want to make sure that your draft is actually finished, that you have completed it before you send it off to an editor, so that they can actually be able to give you feedback that's really helpful. If your manuscript is not done, then they're kind of going in blind because they need to really see how it ends. They need to see how the narrative ends. They need to see what happens to the characters and all of that, if you're writing fiction, in order to give you feedback that will really work and be helpful for you. If it's not finished, then it's the feedback is not going to necessarily apply because you might change your mind about how you choose to end it. So it really needs to be done in its entirety before you send it off to an editor. Really, really important. Again, if you are stuck and you're wanting to work through ideas and questions that you have, that is what a writing coach is for. I also did a live stream about the different types of accountability for writers. And so we talked about the difference between book editors and writing coaches. Go back and watch that live as well. That will be really helpful for you in terms of understanding the different roles between book editors and writing coaches. There are some very important differences. There's some similarities as well, but that writing coach is really going to be very helpful for you if you are stuck with your manuscript. So make sure that you put those different jobs in their proper places and you understand how to relate to them accordingly. We go to the writing coach if you're feeling stuck, if you have questions, if you're having a hard time finishing your manuscript. We go to the book editor once that manuscript is done, at least the rough draft. Okay. All right. The second thing we want to do that that book editors wish you knew, the second thing that they wish you knew was that you should complete a self-edit. You need to complete a self-edit. Now, what is a self-edit? It's exactly what it sounds like. It is where you are going through your own work, looking for errors, looking for changes, looking for things that you need to adjust and correct, and you're doing that on your own without any outside help. Believe it or not, you can actually catch a lot of errors and mistakes in your work just by reviewing it yourself. It's really interesting. I actually talk about this in another live stream as well, talking about how to, I think actually, no, I actually haven't done that live stream yet, so never mind. But there are different things you want to do when you self-edit your work. And so you want to make sure that you do that on your own first before you send it to an editor. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. You're probably asking, well, why do I need to why do I need to edit my work on my own? Isn't that what I'm paying my editor for if I'm self-publishing? And the answer I would say to that is yes and no, right? You are paying your editor to fix edits that you can't fix yourself, right? And there are quite a number of edits that you cannot make yourself for your own manuscript. You will need that professional eye to come in and be able to make those corrections and make those suggestions and to help you polish your manuscript and get it to the best that it can be. And so in order for them to be able to do the best work that they can and not, spend a lot of time, a lot of extra time correcting things, it is really helpful for you to make edits first before you send it to them. This is what can actually save you quite a bit of money, believe it or not, because here's a big secret that a lot of people don't realize. Most editors charge by the word. And so if you are able to cut a lot of unnecessary fluff on your own, that's going to mean that you're not going to pay your editor as much. You won't have as much of a bill to pay in terms of how much it will cost to edit your work. There is a huge difference between a 100,000 word manuscript and a 50,000 word manuscript and a 30,000 word manuscript. Okay. It can really save you hundreds, if not thousands of dollars in the long run. And so you want to go through and really, again, we're not cutting just random things, right? We're cutting those unnecessary words, those where we're being overly repetitive and, things that don't make sense and things that you can just catch on your own. You would really be surprised how much you will be able to find on your own if you go through your manuscript before you start looking for an editor. So make sure you take time to do that. Make sure you take the time to do that self-edit to eliminate a lot of those changes that need to be made and take care of that on your own first. And believe me, a lot of editors can tell when a writer has already gone through their manuscript and made changes on their own. There's a difference in the level of quality than if you just send them a complete rough draft that is just completely untouched. And it really is going to help you a lot in the long run and in terms of your wallet, in terms of how much you're paying for those editing services to do some of that on your own. All right. Point number 3 for what book editors wish every writer knew. And that is to make sure your manuscript is formatted properly. Make sure your manuscript is formatted properly. Now, I want to specify this is actually different from the formatting that your book does after the editing and revision process. After your book has been edited and you have made all the changes and polished everything, then your book will go through a formatting process. And that is actually to make sure that it looks correct in terms of what the book will look like when it's published in its published form. Okay. That is different than the format it's going to be in during the editing process. That's a very different look. And it's important that you don't have it. You don't send your manuscripts to an editor in the format that you want it published in. It's completely different format, and it's going to be harder for them to go through it. And in most cases, they will probably just need to reformat it anyway, which again, is going to take more time and make things more difficult. So not only does this signal to the editor when you format your manuscript, it signals to them that you're taking your work seriously and that you've done your research, quite honestly, but it also saves them the time of having to reformat it for you, which they will appreciate, okay? And so a few things you want to keep in mind with formatting your manuscript. You want to use a basic serif or sans serif font, like a Times New Roman and Arial. Those are a little bit more old school, like Times New Roman in particular, but either one of those will be fine. Just basically a really clear, easy to read font, right? That's what you're going for. This is not the time to use, fonts with all the curly letters or Comic Sans or, stuff that's a little weird and a little kind of, what's the word? Just overly creative, right? The time for creativity is within the work itself, within the writing itself. Be as creative as you want there, but with the actual lettering and the actual way that the words are presented, you want to use clear and easy to read fonts, just to make things easier on your editor and their eyes, right? Second thing, you want to use double spacing. This used to be a lot more important when editing was done by hand. It's not quite as important now, but it's still helpful in terms of reading and just going through it. You use single spacing when you are formatting the book's layout. Again, when you are looking at getting closer to publishing and how you want the book to look when it's printed, that's when you're using single space. Do not use single space when you're sending a manuscript to an editor, right? And that's a different, the formatting at the end is a different part of the process. So make sure that you're using that double spacing that, that in order to make things easier for your editor to read. Third is to use like around 12 font size is good, and then 1-inch margins around all sides. You don't want to have super indented margins and super big text or really, really small text. That's not doing anyone any favors, right? This is not the time to use 8-point font, 8 font size or 20 font size. Like it's not, there's no need to be fancy with it, right? Simple, standard size font is about 12, and 1-inch margins are around all sides of the manuscript are going to be your best bet. And so basically you want to format your manuscript the way that you wrote your essays in high school, right? If many of you, if you remember, for some, it may be further back than others. I'm in that category, so I understand, right? It was ways back. But if you remember the essays you wrote in high school, or if you went to college, same thing, you're going to go for that standard format for your editor. And believe me, they will appreciate that. I have seen my fair share of manuscripts that were in all kinds of letters, all kinds of fonts, all kinds of sizes, and a lot of single spaced. And so just make sure that you are using that standard format, and that will go a long way. All right. Next thing to keep in mind that your editors wish you knew, that book editors wish you knew, is to keep an open mind as it relates to feedback. This is a big one. This is top tier. I'm telling you, this is going to really make a difference in terms of your relationship with your book editor. And you are really going to it's going to make things a lot easier and avoid a lot of tension. I strongly suggest what I call a 24-hour rule before you respond to feedback from your editor. What that means is you need to take, when your editor sends your feedback back on your manuscript and they have it's all inked up in red and there's all of the track changes and everything's there, right? And you see all the things that they want you to fix. It can really get your heart racing, and it can just kind of hurt your feelings a little bit, because it feels like your book is for many writers, your book is your baby, and it feels like someone's telling you your baby's ugly, right? And that can hurt, that can sting our pride for sure. And so I really encourage writers to take at least a 24-hour break after you see your feedback, after you see what your editor has, the comments they've given you on your work. Take that time to read through the comments, and then put it away for at least 24 hours. I would say even several days up to a week if you have the time, because it gives you time to fully process your emotions and to kind of, really mull it over and actually truly consider the feedback. If you're a kingdom writer, take some time and pray over it. Really ask God what it is that you are wanting to do and how you should move forward with this book. And it allows you to get over, again, that hurt feeling of someone, criticizing your baby, because that's hard, right? It's painful to go through that. And so when you have that time that you take away, it allows you to reset, to bring those feelings down, and to get to a place where you can really see your work clearly for what it is. And that's going to be so helpful for you. A lot of times, especially depending on your personality, if you are more of a fighter and you have, strong opinions about your book, your first instinct when you get that feedback is to say, this editor doesn't know what they're talking about. And let me call them and let me explain to them why they don't understand this, this, and this. And then you want to come up with a long list of reasons why they're not doing their job right. Right? And so that can be tempting to do. And so you really want to take that time, take that step back, take that step away from the manuscript completely, look at it and then put it away. Go read a book, go take a walk in the park, go, just do something else for a while, and then come back to it and look at it again with fresh eyes. I promise you, if you take a day or 2 or 3 or more, if you can, I promise you, you will see your work differently once you've had that moment to process your emotions. And that can really help you in terms of being able to implement your editor's feedback and be able to not take it so personally. Really big thing that you want to keep in mind. Remember, your editor is, assuming they're a good editor, they are on your team and they want to help you. They are not there to make your book worse. And so most editors who have the experience and the knowledge of what they're doing are going to make suggestions that they really feel is going to make your work stronger. And so you don't have to do every single thing that they suggest, because they are suggestions and it is your work at the end of the day. And we'll get into that more in a minute. But you want to really take time to take their feedback seriously and really truly consider what they're saying about the changes that they're suggesting you make. Because in many cases, if they're experienced, they are going to know what they're talking about, and they're going to give you feedback that really will make your book better in the long run and make it more effective at what you want to do. So you want to really respect their feedback, really respect what they have to say, and make sure you understand that, again, they're on your team. They're there to help you. And most of the feedback they give you should really make your book better ultimately. All right. Okay, and then the last key, and this one is really important. I think this is such a big deal with so many writers, for what your book editors wish you knew, what they wish every writer knew about the editing process. And that is, you need to know your vision as a writer and what your writing non-negotiables are. You need to know your vision as a writer and know what your writing non-negotiables are. Now, what does that mean? As I said earlier, you do want to make sure that you are taking your editor's feedback seriously. Again, they're on your team. But you want to make sure you're not going to the opposite extreme. You don't want to be so accommodating and so agreeable with your editor's feedback that you lose your vision for your book, that you lose yourself, that you lose your voice, right? You can, if you're not careful, over edit your book to where you really lose what you were trying to say and what you wanted to accomplish and the impact you wanted to have with it. Your voice, your writing voice is invaluable, right? You cannot be duplicated. You cannot be replaced. There is no one in the world that can say things in quite the way that you can. And so that is important. It's your signature. It is your fingerprint that God gave you. And you want to make sure to never lose that with your work, to never lose the vision that He gave you for that work. And so it is very important that while there is a place to take your editor's feedback into consideration and to take it seriously, only you really know your vision and your values as it relates to your book. And so you need to be clear on those values and make sure that you're not deviating from them. Don't ever allow yourself to be pressured into something that feels like compromise. Some editors may mean well, but they may try to encourage you to add things into your book that you're not comfortable adding, or to take things out that you're not comfortable taking out. And ultimately, it is, the book that God gave you at the end of the day, and it is your vision. And so you need to make sure that you are in alignment with that vision. At the end of the day, it is your name on the book and not your editor's. And so you want to make sure that the final product is something you can be proud of. It's something that you feel like truly honors God and honors the vision that God gave you. So make sure that you are staying true to that, and make sure you are clear on that before you find an editor and before you start working with an editor. This is why I recommend that writers get clear on their vision for their book at the very early stages of the writing process, even before you start drafting. You want to sit down and iron out that vision, iron out who your book is for and how you want to reach them and what is the impact that you want to have with that book. Because when you know all of those things, then you can be effective throughout the writing process and understanding what it is that you want to do and not do during the drafting and editing stages of that writing that book. And so that's going to be helpful for you just to keep you on course and to keep you on target as you're going through the writing process. You want to be aiming at something. You want to have that target in place and understand what it is. And so make sure you know those things before you go through the process of hiring an editor. All right. And then I have a bonus point for you today as far as things that your editor wish you knew as a writer that they wish you knew. And that is, when in doubt, you can ask questions. You can always ask questions in the editing process. Your editor is not, or they shouldn't be anyway, this kind of far off, aloof person who you never interact with and you never talk to, right? If I actually suggest, if your editor doesn't offer this, I think they should, but if they don't, ask if they have, if they're able to sit down with you after they have sent you your edits, after they've sent you your manuscript back with all the suggested changes. Ask if they are able to sit down with you and have a conversation about it. If you can ask questions, if you can point to specific pages where you're confused about things. You can even take notes as you're reading through your manuscript and the changes that they've made. And you can, point out things that you're confused about that you don't understand. Now, this is not the time to argue. Again, we want to make sure that we're looking at doing number 4 and making sure that we're keeping an open mind as it relates to feedback, right? That's a callback to point number 4. But you want to, having a conversation is fine. Asking questions and really trying to get clarity is good. Good editors are going to want you to do that. They're going to be open to questions. They're not going to just send you the feedback and say, my word is law, and that's what you need to do. They're going to, want to have a dialogue with you, because ultimately they want you to be happy too, right? It's your book, it's your vision. And so they want you to have a final product that you are proud of and that you're excited about releasing into the world. And so a good editor will be okay with having that conversation with you and answering any questions that you have about the editing process. That is really a big part of their job, is to make sure that you understand what's going on, that you understand the steps involved, and honestly, just to educate you about the editing process in general so that you learn for future books that you might want to write further on down the line. All right. So I hope that this video was helpful for you. I hope that it blessed you and encouraged you. It gave you some practical steps for how to handle the editing process, how to establish a good relationship with your editor, and ultimately how to help you get the most out of the money that you're paying for that edited book that you want to have at the end of the day. So if you found this video helpful and you want to learn more about how to write and live God's way, let's make this a regular thing. Go ahead and subscribe and let me know what you're working on, what questions you have about writing God's way. I would love to help you in any way that I can. So that is it for today's Live with Lisa. I will see you next week, same time, same place. And that is it until then. Until next time, take care and God bless. Bye, y'all.